Awesome. So we are recording and welcome everyone to this Livepeer community call. It's been a while since we've had a quarterly call and really excited for today's topic, which kind of gets to the heart of things. Where are we going? What is the roadmap for the Livepeer network? It's been such an exciting 5-6 months for the project with the fundraise, with migrating to layer 2, with the acquisition and now open sourcing of Mist server. And I thought that we could, just have a really kind of forward-looking discussion with the community on where the project is going. So this is going to be actually fairly informal. We don't have slides or a presentation prepared, but we do have folks from the core team who are here to talk about the Livepeer network roadmap from a few different angles. We'll try and keep folks' interventions short so that we do have enough time for discussion. I've been signed out. Okay. Adam, I'm hoping this is okay. Gonna keep going. Okay. On the agenda, Doug's first going to talk. Doug Pitcanics, the co-founder and CEO of Livepeer, is going to go over Livepeer's vision, mission, and strategy, which he's recently shared inside the core team at Inc. and thought this would be a good opportunity to share this with the broader community. Next up, we'll have Yondon Fu, head of protocol engineering, to talk about the road to full verification. And then Hunter Hillman, who is the network product manager, is going to talk about the network product roadmap that's actually released today. There'll be more follow-up conversation on that. And then we have Jaron, who's the founder of Mist server and VP of video engineering now at Livepeer Inc., who'll be talking about directionally what Mist server means for the Livepeer network. And again, there will be lots of opportunity after this call to go into, all of these topics in more detail, but the purpose of this call today is just to keep it at a really high level. And then at the end, we also have some updates from the community and marketing side. Nelson Ryan, who is on the grants committee, is here, can maybe talk a little bit about where he sees the grants committee going to support the roadmap. And Meredith Tretiak, who is on the Livepeer Inc. marketing team, is going to drop some fun alpha about some cool events we have coming up. And that will, I'm sure, take us through 60 minutes. So, Doug, I'm going to kick it off to you to share, where we're at, where and your thinking is at with Livepeer's vision, mission, and strategy. Thanks.
Sure thing. Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, everyone, for joining and setting this up. That was good how you hinted at if you stick around to the end, you'll get some alpha from Meredith. So something to stick around for. Great. For those who don't know me, I'm one of the founders of Livepeer. Been working on it for over 5 years now. And I'm the CEO of a company that we created called Livepeer Inc. that's dedicated to driving adoption and increasing the adoption and success of Livepeer. To really quickly give a quick reminder of everyone of what the project's mission is it's to build the world's open video infrastructure, right? And the vision for what that enables is that we think, what has been enabled by blockchain technology, that it can coordinate a huge global community to move towards a mission together in a way where everyone who participates can actually be, an owner in this mission and respond to incentives and benefit economically from the success of the project towards that mission is really, really powerful. Because it enables you to create a video infrastructure that does a number of things. One that's as infinitely scalable, because anyone in the world with idle compute and bandwidth in the future can make it available on this network to help with streaming and encoding video anytime there's demand for that type of service. And we know that there's so much more supply out there available, and all the servers and GPUs in the world than there could ever be live streams in the current moment. So you end up with this infinitely scalable network, and you end up with this maximally cost efficient network because you have this open marketplace where people are competing to do all the video compute and broadcast tasks that are necessary. And there's, because it's open and it's competitive and global access without any barriers, that competition should lead to the best prices for video developers. And similarly, their reliability needs should be met as being able to afford redundancies. Another really important element here is, for the first time, you have the right incentives for the best video software in the world to actually be open source, right? You have all people who build on this network, who leverage this network, are incentivized for open source software to exist and be widely accessible so that as many people adopt it and use the network as possible. And so in the video world, typically the best software has been proprietary and closed and licensed out and very expensive. Now, because of the shared token ownership model, you actually have the opportunity for the world's best open video software paired with the most cost-effective, scalable, powerful infrastructure network that meets all video developers' needs across the whole video stack. And we have a long way to go to get there. But if we do, video is this huge, enormous form of media that touches all of our lives. It's over 80% of the traffic on the internet is video. And the software that's built by this project and around this project and the network that all of the community powers should be the backbone of what powers 90% of the world's video 10 years from now, as it's inevitable that the best open software and networks are adopted. So that's kind of the vision for where we're going. How do we get there? It's a long, hard road that we've been on, that we'll continue to be on, to do something this ambitious. But we're at this interesting strategic point, something I'm so excited about that just wasn't here 4 years ago, 3 years ago, but now is finally here, which is that Web3 applications are happening. And in particular, video being popular forms of many applications, Web3 video is happening, right? We're seeing breakthrough mainstream adoption of various use cases across crypto and Web3 and blockchain technologies. Initially, we just saw speculative use cases like capital formation and fundraising and whatnot. But in the last year, we've seen really creative use cases like NFTs, allowing creators to connect direct with their fans and monetize, and sites kind of reaching mainstream awareness and adoption, like, Rarible and Flow and Dapper and OpenSea and these sorts of things, right? We're starting to see social and publishing applications kind of reach the mainstream, content that's published on things like Mirror, is just as wide of a reach as things published on Medium, right? We're seeing play to earn gaming and things like Axie Infinity and metaverses like Decentraland begin to cross over into mainstream and reach millions of users. And so Web3 is here, and across all these categories, gaming, social, media, creator economy, there's video use cases. And so, we're really at this key point in our strategy where we have this huge opportunity as Livepeer to be the Web3 video infrastructure that the whole, I think the future of the internet will be built upon. But in the near term, all of these breakthrough applications that really capture the hearts, minds, and economic attention of users are built on. And that's a huge opportunity, right? And we're just super well set up because of the great network that the community is powering and running, the great software that's part of the project, and what that enables to be able to be there. So there's really kind of like two, I'll just do this quickly, kind of like two prongs to how we become the Web3 video infrastructure. The first is that we make sure that we have kind of product market fit for the video toolkits that Web3 native developers use, right? When hackers are showing up to ETH Global hackathons and DAOs are funding grants for projects that are trying to add video and community-based streaming and whatnot. What is the video product and interface that they need in order to build Web3 native video experiences? And that's connecting with payment options, like things like Superfluid that enable streaming payments. It's token gating for access control using smart contracts instead of traditional DRM. It's connecting to decentralized storage networks for VOD assets, video on demand assets. It's really the Web3 native video experience and what's uniquely enabled by Web3 that kind of you won't see from the traditional video providers that Livepeer has the opportunity to provide. So that's kind of, one prong of the strategy is to be Web3 native and lean into that more than, we were able to, years and years ago. The second prong is that we have I just got a prompt to start my video. There, I have permission now. The second prong is that, there's tremendous interest in the existing video world around blockchain, around crypto, around some of these primitives, and people are figuring out how do they begin to leverage decentralized infrastructures? What are the benefits? How do they cross over? And our, the Mist server software is actually a great entry point for that because it's already deployed across many different use cases that are scaled in the video world. We recently open sourced it, which is a huge milestone. And kind of prong two of the strategy is focus on as wide adoption of that software as possible because it's integrated with Livepeer, and we're working towards integrating it even more tightly directly with the network, so that any existing video application can, with the click of a button, tap into Livepeer's infrastructure and all the capabilities it can provide in the future. So I'll wrap there, save time for everyone else, but excited to have the right kind of hosted product entry points for Web3 developers, as well as the right deployable software for people that deploy video software on their own applications to cross over into Web3 as well.
Thanks, Doug. That's awesome. Yeah, there's the most exciting part of working with Livepeer and as being part of the project for me is like the complexity of pushing supply and demand sides of a network at the same time. And there's so much going on, just to get that Web3 signal on the demand side and making sure that we are, iterating on our infrastructure and our projects to do that. So thank you for that. And on the infrastructure core network side, Yondon is going to chat with us now about getting to full verification. And I think your video should work now, Yondon, if you want to try that.
Sure, let me see. Cool. So I think this will primarily be focused on verification, but I'll also treat this as more of a, so Hunter next is gonna give a product roadmap overview that covers the next couple of months. But I think talking about verification and a few other, I'll talk about verification and a few other things that I think there's gonna be longer term roadmaps around that we're just getting started on now, just to give people a little bit of a preview around directionally how some of the, call it shorter term things that we're working on in the next few months can align with kind of the longer term direction, a lot of which is aligned around some of the things that Doug just mentioned. But starting with verification, so I think many people on the call, especially in the Orchestrator community, are already aware of what I'm referring to here, but just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So verification is this problem in any decentralized network where you need to be able to provide strong security guarantees to the end users that want to use the network. And it's a little bit more challenging and not straightforward when you think about having a permissionless network where anyone can participate. And on one hand, I think people in the crypto and Web3 ecosystem are familiar with the importance of security if they've thought about blockchains and all these systems, thinking about how you can defend yourself against attacks on the network. But I think more importantly, we can also connect this with how we think about demand side adoption of the network, where a lot of this technology is really new. This notion of using a decentralized network to help scale your application at a really low cost and giving you all the features that you need is also a really new concept. And anything that we can do in order to establish confidence and give users as many guarantees as possible, I think is a really important step in pushing forward adoption so that people feel as comfortable as possible switching over, and we have minimal barriers to entry and minimal friction when switching over to these new set of technologies. So in the context of Livepeer, as with any decentralized network, we have the verification problem. And we've gone through a few iterations at addressing this problem in the past, where most recently, the current version that is available as a feature on the network is that broadcasters are able to optionally enable the use of a machine learning classifier in order to automatically run checks on the incoming video that they receive from orchestrators in order to determine whether the video was correctly processed or not. However, we knew that there was a variety of shortcomings with that approach, most notably additional latency and computational overhead for broadcasters that want to opt into this feature. So this is what led the core team to push out this proposal towards the end of last year that was called fast and full verification as improvements to the verification process, where that proposal described a two-pronged approach. Can also think of it as a defense in-depth approach, where you have a few layers of verification, where the first layer is meant to be really fast, really cheap, a layer that is really accessible for broadcasters to use on a consistent basis. And the second layer is more expensive, more accurate, provides stronger guarantees, but you would likely not want to actually invoke it in practice all that often. And the combination of those two things together can provide strong guarantees for the end user. So the first layer being fast verification and the second layer being full verification. So towards the end of last year, the core team began by focusing primarily on fast verification, mainly because it was easier to roll out into production. And it was a direct replacement of the existing verification systems that a broadcaster has access to. The basic idea behind this system was to allow a broadcaster to request certain data to be produced by orchestrators, namely one, this perceptual hash, which is the idea is that an orchestrator would only be able to produce this data correctly if they've actually done a substantial amount of the work correctly. And then that data can then be used to cross-check the results produced by multiple different orchestrators against that of one another. And then through this process, the broadcaster is given the ability to actually filter out and detect any orchestrators that are doing the work incorrectly. However, due to the work on the Confluence protocol upgrade, which ended up taking a lot of protocol engineering time towards the end of last year, that was ultimately prioritized. And as we all know, that upgrade was completed a short while ago. And now with that upgrade in the rear view mirror, the plan is to rededicate focus to actually rolling out fast verification in full in production so that it's available. And Hunter will talk a little bit about that in the context of the product roadmap, and I can chime in there as well. But looking forward, of course, we want to finish that rollout. We also have the full verification piece of that roadmap. And Hunter will also mention a little bit some of the initial steps that we'll take in order to push forward on that portion of the roadmap. But the big picture goal here with full verification is to get to a point where we can actually have a dispute resolution process on the network. And the idea is that the dispute resolution process would not be run very often, but the idea is that broadcasters will have the ability to actually raise disputes against orchestrators if it ever came down to it, and escalate if needed. And then there would be an arbitration process such that if there is a dispute, we have signed cryptographic evidence of all of the video data that was involved in a particular dispute, and that can be used in the arbitration process to actually apply penalties if needed. And this just creates a much stronger, not only disincentive for anyone to actually do the work incorrectly, but at the same time, it strengthens the economic security of the network. So one of the focuses going forward is going to be the R&D in this area and completing a design such that it can be presented for community review. And we'll talk about that in the roadmap. But those are the next steps there and some of the steps that we'll need to take in order to get to that big picture goal. So I'll pause there. And I think that presents an overview of where we've been with that roadmap and some of the big picture goals and where we directionally plan on going. And of course, there will need to be incremental milestones along the way, but I think that should paint a general picture of what's happening in this area. That's it for me.
Thanks, Yondon. That's awesome. Before I turn it over to Hunter, I just reminded everyone, yeah, please post questions in the chat. We'll have time for discussion at the end, but yeah, please get going with questions there. I see we do have one already. Maybe we can just pause on this before we jump into Hunter's piece. Is the end game of the verification process that an orchestrator's delegated stake could get slashed if they are proven to be misbehaving?
That's the general idea, but I think what I would note is that slashing could take a number of forms. I think a more general idea is being able to apply on-chain penalties that are transparent to the rest of the community, because one of the things that we would like to improve on is that with fast verification, it definitely gives the broadcaster the ability to apply local penalties to orchestrators, because any behavior that they see themselves, they can adjust their behavior going forward as they detect or don't detect certain issues with video that's inbound. But that's all localized. Only the broadcaster has a view of that, and that's limited to that single broadcaster. So on-chain, the nice thing about having some of this information disseminated on-chain is that it's transparent and verifiable for all parties. So I think that's the main idea. And then in terms of whether an orchestrator stake should be burned, taken away, whether they should be jailed, and what the actual mechanism there is, I think is subject to some design iteration. But I think the main idea is having this be able to happen on-chain.
Cool, thanks. Hopefully that answered your question, Chris. Hunter.
Cool, thanks, Jen. And thanks, Jaron, for that overview of fast and full verification. I think it's really helpful and good context to have. So I guess just to kick off the discussion around the roadmap, a bit about what we've tried to do here. So Doug and Yondon have both talked about some really forward-looking aspects. And I think I'd like to cover a bit about what that means in the near term. And I think we've tried to find a good balance of activities and projects that push us farther towards the goal while still making concrete improvements in the near term. So
I just want to pause 1 second and remind people that you have published a product roadmap today. So you're going to be, yeah, and you've been working really hard on this. So it's awesome that it's live. And I just want to remind people that they will be able to find that. Where are we?
It's on the Livepeer blog right now.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and at some point in the future, it may be ported to the website itself, but it's on the blog for now.
Okay, cool. I'll get a link and post that in this chat so folks have it.
Yeah, great. Actually, here, let me post the link right now, so people can follow along a bit.
Great.
Thanks, Chris. Cool. So to kick things off, obviously we spent a great deal of time over the past 2 quarters working on Confluence, and that's been really one of the major focuses for our network. There have been some other or smaller projects ongoing as well, including verification, including the addition of some codecs. But I think with Confluence wrapping up, it really gives us a chance to look forward and look at what Confluence can enable for Livepeer, and also what we can do to get towards the sort of end state that Doug again has described. So I think this roadmap is really responsive to those ideas. And so it's pretty focused on the key user-facing improvements to the Livepeer network. So, we'll obviously be working to improve stability and developer experience alongside some additional projects like a tighter integration of MIST server and the broadcaster node are also underway, but are a bit outside the scope of this specific network roadmap. Jaron will talk a little bit later about MIST and how that fits into the larger picture. But so I think we can generally categorize the updates that we're making into 3 buckets. First is improvements to the delegation market and the Livepeer Explorer. Second is improvements to the core Go Livepeer software. And third is protocol upgrades. So I guess as to first speak to the Explorer and the delegation market. So while we were on L1 pre-Confluence, you saw a great deal of lock-in. Most delegators weren't really interested in moving their stake around. And this is borne out in the data. If you look before Confluence and after Confluence, you all of a sudden start to see a great deal of movement of stake between orchestrators. And then this is really exciting, primarily because it indicates that delegators are starting to respond to the underlying economics of the protocol and are starting to select for orchestrators that are A, high performing, but B, set favorable rates. And I think this is a good and positive development for the network and something that we need to encourage. But most delegators realistically right now are just choosing based on like call ratio, reward cut and fee cut. And I think that doesn't paint a full picture of what the protocol incentives are. So we'll be instituting a number of updates designed to better reflect the actual incentives at play, looking at things like trailing ROI, and hopefully pushing delegators to select choices that are optimal for them, which according to the economics of the protocol are also optimal for the operation of the protocol. So I think that's going to be a very important update for the Explorer in general and should have some pretty big impacts for how the market looks and how stake distribution looks. Secondly, we're going to be moving staking actions to a single page. This is a bit of a nuanced bullet point, but I think it's important for the overall user experience. It will probably lead to some performance improvements and generally improved UX for delegators. So it fits in this broader category of these improvements to the delegation market and the Explorer. I can elaborate on that, but I do want to make sure that I get to everything on the list and leave Jaron some time. So I'm going to press on. So I think the second bucket here is improvements to the Go Livepeer software. So we're going to be placing a heavy focus on verification, which Yondon has discussed at length. But I think I want to note that it's a first-class priority for us. And something that we're going to be spending a lot of time and effort on and making sure that we get it into a good state and get it into production and have it become a core part of how the network operates. Secondly, we want to implement opt-in telemetry for node operators. So if you're not familiar with the term telemetry, it basically just means collecting logs and information from remote instances of software and sending them back to the development team in some central location and where we can dig through them and figure out what's actually going on in the wild. I think this is going to be, so it'll be an entirely opt-in process. We're not interested in forcing anyone to have their software phone home. But for those that do opt in, it's going to help us get a lot of visibility into what's happening out in the wild. And I think that will help us anticipate problems, it'll help us solve problems, and it'll help us get orchestrators and broadcasters for that matter, or better answers about what is going on. And when you see an issue, what is the root cause and when can you expect a resolution? So I think it's a really important step for the network. It seems like it's small relative to some of the other things on this roadmap, but it is sneaky important. And so finally, improvements to transcoding in latency. So right now, the latency is a bit it higher than the industry standard. I think this is, very much in keeping with the goal that Doug has stated at the beginning of this call. We want to be the world's open video infrastructure, and that means that we really need to be at or better than the industry standard latency, and so we're going to be continuing to push forward or towards that goal. And we can get into more of the technical details if someone's interested in that. But suffice it to say that this is a priority for us. So finally, within the Go Livepeer or workflow bucket, we have improving the fee market function. And so this is a bit of a secondary priority for us. Obviously, we're prioritizing latency and telemetry and verification. But to the extent that we have the time and resources to focus on this, we're interested in updating how the algorithms in Go Livepeer impact the protocol's fee market. Basically, right now, orchestrators lack full visibility into broadcaster pricing, and the orchestrator selection isn't as sensitive to price as it could be. So if in the future we want to have a true market here, we need to start looking at some of those factors. And I think that this will be an iterative process, but is really important to, again, making sure that the economics that play out in the wild are the economics that are specified in the protocol. And so finally, just to touch on some protocol updates, and Yondon, feel free to chime in here if you have anything to add. But first, we're going to be looking at increasing the current orchestrator limit and reducing broadcaster or deposit requirements. These are two items that are very much tied together. So, part of the reason that capital requirements are so high right now is that the broadcaster basically has to cover the probabilistic micropayment deposit for each potential orchestrator that it could potentially need to pay out to. And so this creates a number of problems for the network. The requirements are prohibitively high for smaller broadcasters. In addition, because this limit is in place, it potentially excludes some low-stake orchestrators who could contribute meaningfully to the network. That's not the case right now, but you can see it becoming the case pretty rapidly. And moreover, these limits could theoretically lead to a supply crunch. It's really important to preempt that risk with this sort of an update, because the protocol upgrade process, as I'm sure you're all familiar, isn't really conducive to like a quick just-in-time update to fix this sort of thing. As the network scales, we really need to be prepared for that eventuality. And I think this is a step towards that goal. And so what this means in terms of actual technical terms is we're probably going to be looking at updating both the payment protocol implementation and the orchestrator discovery process. We're very much in the R&D phase on this. And so we're not quite ready to commit to like a full protocol upgrade within this coming quarter, but it is next up on our roadmap. We are actively researching how this implementation would look, and I think you can expect to see some posts on the forum pretty soon, and then the process will proceed from there. And then finally, as John had mentioned, the secondary protocol goal is to look at verification dispute resolution frameworks and penalties for misbehavior. So I think Yondon covered that pretty thoroughly. So I'll leave off for now. I'm noticing that we have a number of questions in the chat as well, so I want to make sure I cover some of those. Chris is asking, will the telemetry data be available to all broadcasters on the network? So as we've currently conceived of it, and this is an area where I think we would certainly love to hear your feedback. I think that the idea is that it would be going to the core team so that we can better debug and understand what's happening in the wild. Now, if that's in the Go Livepeer software, presumably another broadcaster could use that opt-in telemetry as well. I hope that answers the question. But again, we're still speccing out exactly what this will look like. So I'd expect to see some updates on the precise implementation in the near future.
Yeah, there's something that we've discussed briefly, is that there's different forms of telemetry data as well. So I think some of the categories include logs, error logs, and then there's also certain metric data that you would care about particular nodes on the network. And I think the last one, it might be interesting to consider ways that information could be made more publicly accessible, especially if it's an opt-in process. So if people are familiar with, say, the ETH stats page that certain Ethereum nodes can opt into to report some of their metrics data to, that's a dashboard that is only possible and is a public dashboard based on that data. So it might make sense to have that data be more publicly accessible if you opt in, but perhaps something like logs and error logs, it might not make as much sense. So I think that's something that can definitely be considered.
I think that's a wonderful point, Jan. And I believe Fort Koonsman is the one who's working on it. There's been an effort in the Orchestrator community to start to aggregate some stats. So as we go down this road, I think we can try and gather a little feedback there and see if it's feasible. I think that's all I got. So I think I'll turn it back over to Shannon, but I believe Yondon's next. Or not Yondon, Jaron.
Yeah. Thanks, Hunter, and congratulations to you and everyone on the team. I know Adam Sofer has been spending a lot of time behind the scenes on all of this. So really amazing to see it in the roadmap for everyone. And yeah, look forward to more conversations on this. You have a bi-weekly open office hours that's been going the last month or so. We have the Discord. There'll be lots of places for people to keep providing their feedback on that. Cool. Jaron, Pieter, are you with us?
I am. Hi.
Amazing. So we're going to kick it over to you to talk about this server, which has been, one of the most exciting additions to the Livepeer project in very recent memory. And there's lots of interest in understanding, what does Miss Server mean for the network? And so you're going to tell us about that. Thanks.
You stole the first 3 sentences of what I was going to talk about. Anyway, so yeah, I think that we have been advertising for the last few years as Miss Server / TDV Tech, and I've been telling the community as well, is that Miss Server is a media toolkit. But that doesn't really explain what a media toolkit is. So I'll be trying to go into that a little bit and then follow up with some plans for what will be in this toolkit going forward and what we're currently working on. So to begin with, there is no, I know that Livepeer is trying to provide the open video stack to some degree, right? The open video technology, etc. But there is no generic stack that everyone in the video industry is using. Like, depending on what you're doing with video, you could have a completely different stack from someone else. I was planning to have some fancy graphics, and at some point we'll probably have those, but I don't right now. So use your imagination as I talk. While there is no generic stack and there can be wild differences between different users of video technology, there are a few common pieces that come back over and over again in many solutions, if not all. And things like those are transcoding, which is a lot of the focus of Livepeer right now, but also an origin network, an edge network / a CDN, stuff like that. Those are common pieces that almost everyone will need, if not everyone. Well, to give a little bit more context in the sense of how does Miss Server play a role in all this? Well, the Livepeer network provides infrastructure currently focused on transcoding. Then there's livepeer.com, the hosted service, which offers services that can be used as ready-made pieces to this stack, or a stack is something that makes more sense probably. And at the same time, Mist Server provides media-focused tools to build pieces of such a stack or a complete stack from scratch. So if you want to do something custom that no one else is doing, instead of reusing some piece of that stack from some existing service provider, you could build only that part and reuse other pieces of the stack from service providers, other technologies, etc. And being a toolkit, that means that Mist Server itself usually does not let you just use it as is without making changes. It's made for developers, which means that if you are trying to build something, you would use Mist Server to build it faster, to build it more easily, to tie two things, maybe something you've built and something standardized to each other, stuff like that. So it's more similar to the toolkit of, say, a handyman that might have a hammer, a drill, etc. And these by themselves have no purpose as such, but they are tools that you use to do something useful with. Same with Mist. So what does that mean in terms of Mist's priority for development? Because that's what all this is about, right? Looking forward on what is the roadmap going forward. Well, it's a bit interesting because Mist Server is a toolkit. The priority when it comes to Livepeer Network integration is then to provide the easiest way to leverage the Livepeer Network for media-related projects. So besides that hammer and that drill, we would also offer something that connects to the Livepeer Network and lets you use that for whatever you're doing for media. And currently, we have an easy way to use the livepeer.com service, the hosted service. But we also, of course, want to provide easy ways to use the rest of the network directly. Which means that as a first step to kind of get this kickstarted, there's a current project going on, which is, I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to take, but it's pretty close to completion, where the Livepeer Node software and the Mist Server software will be more closely integrated. And that will make it easy to run them together and have one use the other. And that way you can kind of run like a hybrid node, so to speak. More longer term, we want Mist Server to be able to take over an increasing number of media-related tasks from the node software, starting with stuff like broadcaster functionalities and later transcoding functionalities as well. But we most likely will not take over much of the orchestrator functionalities because from a purely technical standpoint, they don't really perform media tasks themselves. I mean, right now the media does flow through the orchestrators, but if you look from like an optimization perspective, we kind of want to cut out that media flow at some point. I'm not sure when, if ever, that will happen, but we would like to not have the media run through the orchestrator and go straight from the servers that actually handle the media so that we can offer lower latencies and stuff like that. So doing orchestrator tasks in Mist Server probably doesn't make much sense, but who knows how the future will develop and how things will change. So we may change our mind on that, who knows. But currently that is roughly the direction we're going in. On another side note, the full technical roadmap for Mist Server is planned to actually be published publicly somewhere on the Mist Server website in the near-ish future. We're getting pretty close to having that ready for people to look at, but it's not quite ready yet. So please give us a little bit more time. And once that's live, you'll have like a continuous insight in what things are nearly complete, what is more long-term stuff that we're working on, and how close they are to being released, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Jaron. It's been one of the most popular topics on the water coolers every Monday is, wanting to just give more insight into what this means. The orchestrator community is super excited, about what this means. So thank you for that. And we can definitely follow up with the community if there's more interest in kind of digging into what this means at more technical levels. But that was an amazing overview. I don't see any questions on that either. Doug,
awesome.
Is excited. Yeah. The vision for fully decentralized broadcast nodes is pretty exciting. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Cool. We have 13 minutes left. I have 2 more people that I want to bump up to panelist, if I can do that. Nelson and Ryan, why can't I bump you up? Sorry. I don't know why. Oh, That's because I'm no longer actually the host. I don't know if Adam, are you able to bump people up? If you could bump up Nelson and Meredith, that would be awesome. Sorry, everyone. 1 second. I've lost, yay, okay, Meredith is here. Hopefully someone magic, yay, thank you, Adam. Welcome. Hey, Nelson Ryan, thanks for joining. Nelson is the Livepeer Grants Committee lead. And Nelson, yeah, we have a few minutes left. If you could just spend a couple minutes, and then we'll turn it over to Meredith. But yeah, your thoughts on how the Grants Committee can help activate all of this stuff, and what's the roadmap for grants?
Yeah, sure. And again, I just wanted to say congratulations to the whole Livepeer community on the Arbitrum transition. It's been really exciting to see as a long-time community member. Yeah, in terms of the role for Livepeer grants, it's been very exciting seeing the amount of activity just in terms of inbound grants we've been seeing. A lot of people really excited about the vision of Web3 and building some really interesting stuff. I think that's definitely given us a lot to think about in terms of the role of the grants committee in that. I think in terms of thinking about for people that have ideas or are building stuff, there's really kind of two different, I guess, paths that we kind of see for a lot of these tools. And one is for what I like to think of as like public goods, which could be tools for the community to, yeah, perhaps it's to help orchestrators, or perhaps it's even for community members to better understand network activity. And then there's sort of more of the application path, or sort of for-profit path, where there's a project and they want to pursue, perhaps, you know, it's a business they're going to run themselves, or perhaps they're looking down the adventure capital potentially, and the grants can be a way for them to sort of get started for applications where we see the real sort of potential for that to drive significant traction to the Livepeer network. And I think from both parts, yeah, we've been very active in sort of giving out grants. And in terms of thinking about, you know, we've had a lot of interesting proposals in terms of people thinking about what can the grants committee do to help, you know, on delegation markets, to help orchestrators that want to bootstrap and things like that. I think one thing that we've always sort of said from day one is that with the grants committee, we really want to make sure we're not crowding out the organic sort of community. And in that sense, I think we have sort of taken an approach where we look to, you know, not compete for work in the network. We want to try to allow the inflation mechanism to sort of function and allow people to bootstrap organically. And I do think one thing that we've seen in the Livepeer community from the early days is this sort of culture of, you know, for new orchestrators that want to get started and they're sort of trying to think about how can I sort of build up my stake? How can I stand out in the community? We have always sort of had this culture of, you know, if you do want to do that, the greatest way to do that is to start adding value, start building tools and things like that. We don't want to be in a situation where, you know, whether it's the grants committee or any sort of individual community members are picking winners. It really is about what can you do for the network? And we've always sort of had that approach. And I think for the grants committee, we really see it as a way to kind of, yeah, give support to these people in the early stages of that journey. And then to sort of still give room for the dynamic sort of community to really do the rest. So yeah, that's a little bit how we're thinking about it in terms of, I guess, what we're focused on. Right now, I think it's definitely applications. So, you know, if you're a community member listening and you're working on something interesting that you think could drive real traffic to the network, definitely feel free to apply or reach out to any of us on the grants committee privately if you're trying to think through how the best way to sort of go about putting that together is. But yeah, that's a little bit about how I'm kind of thinking about things.
Awesome. Thanks, Nelson. Yeah, it's been exciting to see the uptick in applications, especially on the demand side, as you mentioned. So it's great to see, and we continue to welcome applications for supply and demand side activity. Thanks.
No worries.
Cool. Meredith, drop some alpha. What can we do that's fun and cool together?
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, I'm happy to kind of close out this amazing session with just some really fun stuff that we have coming up. So first off, we are launching a new kind of branded event concert series called Livepeer Sessions. And this is a space, all these concerts will be both virtual and in real life. So we're trying to get maximum involvement from the community and like inviting everyone. But what's really unique about these concert events is that it's a showcase for different projects that are building on Livepeer. So this is the first time out. This will happen next week while we're in NFT LA. And we have this band, a lot of people know them. Great, good, fine, okay. So maybe you're a fan, maybe they're new to you, but I think it'll be a really great show. So we will be live streaming the concert. But the idea is that for each subsequent event that we will like showcase different projects building on Livepeer, have more video NFT, examples of what that could look like. And so it's all about like bringing Web3 mainstream, showcasing what's possible on Livepeer, and involving the community as much as possible in like what we're building and what the experience becomes. So really excited to announce that here in this call today. We will be posting an announcement right after the call on Discord. So there'll be a link to the invite. So definitely click in and get your virtual invitation. And if you happen to be in LA, would love for you to drop by. Second up, we have also announcing the Livepeer Community Summit. So this will be a one-day event taking place in DevConnect. So again, we will have in real life with a lot of the core team going to Amsterdam, and of course, Miss Server's team mostly being based in Amsterdam as well. So we'll have a lot of the core team there, and then we will live stream and have a lot of different talks and different things. So to really bring in the community. So we'll also start a thread in a little bit just on Discord. So if anyone has any ideas on how to bring in the community or how to make this a better virtual or in real life experience or certain topics that you'd like covered, we'll start that chat in Discord to get all of your different input. Another fun thing that I am excited to announce is that we are actually creating our first Livepeer high fidelity commercial, which will also be premiering next week. This is a really fun project and also totally created by one of our own orchestrators, Authority Null, who is also a video producer. So we've been working really closely with him to have a really cool concept for Livepeer. So I'm not going to give it away just yet, but know that more content is coming out around that in the next few days, and we will share it with the community as soon as it is live. So we're just putting the final touches on that, but really excited. It's such a cool idea, and the final version coming out looks so awesome. So I'm really, really excited to share that. And then just one last final note, we still have the content marketing channel. So if you're interested in contributing in any way or want to just stay up to date with what's happening on the marketing side, feel free to drop into that channel. And then we also do have a monthly call. So if you are interested in joining that monthly call just to hear what's up with marketing and give us ideas, and it's just kind of an open collaborative space. So that's a lot of fun. And we had our first one last month, and our next one is coming up soon. So you can always just drop a note and say, I'd like to join, and you will be added to that call. So a lot of really fun things happening, and really looking forward to creating a great rest of the year with all of you. Thanks.
Amazing. Thank you, Meredith. So much fun stuff happening. And if anyone is in LA or surrounding area next week, do let Meredith and I know. We would love to see you. And yeah, if you're close to Amsterdam on April 20th, let us know as well. Great. I don't see any other questions. This has been an amazing call. Thank you, everyone who joined. This is recorded so we can share it later. Please, share your thoughts in the Discord. If there were, we covered a lot. We literally covered all of the ground for Livepeer on this call today at a high level. Would love to hear your thoughts on what specific topics came up that you want to discuss more, what you felt was missing. DM me, put it in the Discord, and yeah, here we go. Thanks, everyone.